Hello, and welcome to Chaos to Clarity, the podcast that's your compass to navigate the exciting world of service based businesses. If you're a determined woman in your current business adventure, striving to conquer the chaos and build your empire, then you are in the right place. I'm your host, Maggie, your go to business bestie and chaos navigator. I've spent nearly 2 decades in the service based industry, building a photography business, a yoga studio, and now a thriving coaching practice. I've cracked the code to consistent income without all the chaos and noise. So get ready to increase your business growth, connect with your ideal clients, and find ease in both business and in life. It's time to turn your frustrations into inspiration and your chaos into clarity. So go ahead and grab your coffee, a pen and paper, and let's dive into the journey of building your dream service-based business together. Are you ready? Let's go. All right, everyone, welcome back to season 2 of the Chaos to Clarity podcast. My name is Maggie. I am your host. I am your business mentor and your human design expert. And today I have LaShall Dodson on with me. I'm so excited to have this conversation. So, LaShall, if you can please tell everyone who you are and what you do.
Hi, everyone. My name's LaShall Dodson, and I am the founder of Dedicated Virtual Professional Services. And I do online business management, so OBM work, and also Facebook and Instagram ads management for small to medium-sized businesses.
Cool. I love that so much. And I think that today's conversation, just knowing you ultimately help a lot of people with lead generation, this is going to be such a great way for people to see the power of having an OBM, but also I feel like having some ads knowledge, I think is really great. I've definitely been dabbling in like what can ads do for me. So I think this is going to be really awesome. So my first question is I am curious when it comes to having conversations about your business with other people. How have those conversations helped you grow? So in terms of generating leads or even generating collaborations similar to, being on this podcast, how has kind of getting into those conversations, like what has that been like for you?
Yeah, so for me, networking and getting into conversations has really been huge for my business.
Cool.
And I guess the biggest advice I could give to people is get outside of your comfort zone. If you don't like to do it, it becomes very natural and very easy. I
Hmm.
started going to networking events, most of them virtual because there's a ton of virtual events. I've done a couple in person, and really it's just have a conversation. It doesn't have to be scary. You don't have to have a list of canned questions. It's literally just have a conversation, get to know people. And through that, not selling, right? Through
Hmm.
that conversation, you then start to make connections. And then what you do for your business comes out, and what they do for their business comes out. And then you guys just kind of talk and come up with a way to possibly work together. So I've gotten some leads from networking, and I've also had a lot of collaboration.
Yeah.
I really, really try to do 2 to 3 meetings every week
Okay.
around people that I've met through my networking events.
Yeah, I love that so much. And you know, I think when you're focused on growth, right? Learning how to have beneficial conversations, right? Where you're kind of walking into this conversation going, I'm not exactly sure. Like you don't have this like I have to sell outcome, right? It's more of like what can I share? How can I invite people to be in my world? And like understand what I do. And something that a lot of people ask me is how do you have better conversations, like conversations that people understand what you're doing. So I'm curious, as you have gone to more and more networking events and even just being online, how has your, I guess, pitch, for lack of better terms, right? Like when you go to those meetings, what are things that you are asking for, right? Like in terms of Are you going in there asking for collaborations, clients, referrals? Like, what are things that have really sparked more of those conversations?
Yeah, I think for me, I let everybody know like I'm here for collaboration. I love to figure out ways to work together. And I'm also here to generate leads for my own business, right?
Hmm.
And I let everybody know that up front. But then what I think helps is I say that up front, but then I kind of am very open to just getting to know you, right?
Yeah.
And then I try to find a commonality between people. Like, hey, they have a son that plays baseball as well. That's a huge connection. Okay, now we've bonded yet a little bit more. So
Hmm.
I'm just kind of trying to ask, in addition to business, I also try to ask like personal questions,
Yeah.
right? So I can get to know them on a personal level and then really connect.
Hmm. And I think that's so important. That's a lot of what my, I guess, strategy is. And ironically, I had a conversation earlier this morning with a person who she's been in my lead gen, I guess, pipeline for a while. And she said to me, "How do you sell without being so salesy?" Like to me, because I don't know. I guess I'm not super salesy when I sell, which is good to know
Mhm.
because I think I am super salesy, right? So, that kind of proves that like just because you think it doesn't mean it comes off in that way. And I'm really glad she asked me that. Because number one, it gave me a reflection point, right? To be like, oh, I don't have like that's literally a thought of my own, a story that I'm telling myself. I'm too salesy. I can let that thought go. I now have proof that I'm not, right? So being able to like navigate some of the mindset of that, I think where a lot of people get tripped up, especially when having conversations, right? And like you said, finding that commonality of like, oh, where do you live? Where did you grow up? Or like, do you have kids? Do you, like something that people are a little bit more willing to be like, oh, we're having a normal conversation. I'm going to let my guard down,
Mhm.
right? So you can start building rapport. You can start building that like know, like, and trust factor where people are like, oh, yeah, I had this really great conversation with an OBM the other day. Now I have a person asking for that. So now I'm going to connect you, right? You never really know where those referrals or collaborations are going to lead you. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah. So I'm curious so we talked a little bit about how you generate stuff for your right leads and connections for yourself. What does that look like in your business? So I know you're an OBM, right? You're an ads specialist. When you're supporting your clients, what does growth look like for some of your clients?
Yeah, so for some of my clients, for my ads clients, growth is very numerical, right? It's
Sure.
it's all in the numbers, right?
Yeah.
ROAS, do we have enough return on ad spend? Do we have click-through rates? And it really depends on for ads what the person's objective is. It
Hmm.
could be just about bringing awareness to their business. There's certain campaigns we can run for that. Some people want true leads. Some people want free consults booked. Whatever that is, that's the kind of value I love to bring to my ads clients, right? And that can change. We could run ads for awareness for 2 months and then, kind of switch gears and okay, now we're going to do a lead campaign.
Hmm.
For a couple months because they're going to launch, right? They're going to launch in a few months. So we've worked the audiences the way they should be worked leading up to a launch.
Yeah, that's
You
cool.
know, yeah. So there's tons of different strategies with ads that we could really talk about all day. It's so much fun. And then, with my OBM clients, a lot of that is I've got a lot of clients who really struggle with organizing their desks,
Hmm.
um, delegating. Delegation is huge for CEOs,
Yes.
especially
Uh-huh.
I guess for us women CEOs. It really
Yeah.
is. Right. So delegation, we work on strategy, we do goal setting. So it's really where I see the biggest thing with having an OBM in your business is it allows if you hire an OBM and you let that OBM come in and start handling management tasks, managing certain projects, managing team members, your 1099 employees. If you let an OBM come in and take that off your plate,
Hmm.
you now, as the CEO, have X number of hours that you've now gained back to focus on what you need to do for your business. So if you're the CEO, you need to go out there and be that face, that networking, that lead generation. Now that you've brought in an OBM, it gives you the opportunity to go back and do the stuff that you love and need to do to drive your business.
Yeah. Ooh, I love that so much. And I think, yes, as a woman, I absolutely, well, I'm also a Leo, right? Like my
Me too. Yes.
So I feel like, and this is obviously my lived experience as a Leo, right? Being like, I can't delegate that. They're
Yep.
not going to do it right. If
Yep.
I want it done right, I'm going to do it myself, which I think is something that, so I was a kid in the late 80s, early 90s, and I feel like that was a big theme when I was a kid. You better do it yourself if you want it done right. And I remember hearing that from people who are older than me, right? So that I guess kind of like hierarchy of like, oh, somebody older is saying that to me, it must be right. Uh,
Right.
where, like when you step into the entrepreneur world, like, well, now you literally wear the however many hats there is to
Mhm.
run a business. And running a business is relatively quote unquote simple, right? The steps are not that hard when you look at the numbers, like numbers in versus numbers out. Yeah, okay, cool. But like then you get into the mindset stuff of like, oh, I could really use someone to create the Canva stuff for me. I could really use someone to make sure my inbox isn't crazy. I could really use someone to make sure I have SOPs for the things that I'm doing so that if God forbid something happens to me, like someone else can step in and run my business. Like we wear all those hats now, right?
Right.
And I think that is important when you're starting out, even when you're like in the messy middle of like, oh, I have way too much on my plate and how do I hand some of that stuff off? So I think my next question goes back to delegation and some of that strategy that you help your clients with. Like, how do you help them release the tight grip, release the white knuckle control, and like delegate? Like, what does that process kind of look like for you?
Yeah. So most of the time, my clients find me because they're already at that point where they're like, I'm on overload, right?
Yeah.
Help. And it's really taking a step back.
Yeah.
We have a couple calls to kind of talk about, I got to learn your business, right? Explain to me your business model. Let's see where you're struggling. And then I want to take a look at their desk specifically.
Okay.
What are you spending your time working on? And
Mm-hmm.
and that usually is the eye opener for me where I can see that you physically are spending 30 hours on client work.
Mm-hmm.
You are spending X number of hours over here on this other thing. How much of your time are you actually spending on marketing, on lead generation, on networking, on you being the face of your business? And if
Mm-hmm.
that is like 1 to 2% or zero, okay, you've got things backwards.
Right.
And the other thing that we like to take a look at, I look at that, and then I also want to know, it's very important. What do you want to do in your business? What are the tasks that you have on your plate that you love to do? Because
Mm-hmm.
if you don't love to do them, they need to come off your desk and go to somebody else.
Right.
And outsourcing can help save you money in the long run. People see it as an expense up front,
Mm-hmm.
and it may be an upfront out of pocket expense, but the return that you're going to get by outsourcing to someone and getting your time, which is more valuable, back
Right.
is really worth it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would totally agree. And I think, something you briefly touched on was like, what are you spending your time on?
Mhm.
And is it actionable? Like it might be action taking where like, oh, I have to make these Canva graphics. Oh, I have to create the copy. Oh, I have to reply to these 35 emails. But is that an action item in the thought of, is it making you money?
Right.
Right? Like, I think a lot of people, when they get into business, they don't necessarily understand like what a money-making action item is versus just a keeping me busy action item, right?
Exactly. Yeah. People don't. They really don't.
Right.
And if you're doing the keeping me busy actions, you're not then moving your business to the next level and the next step. In
Hmm.
order to scale, you really have to get your delegation in order. You have to get people who specialize in those things, especially if you don't like to do them. You
Right.
have to get them off your desk in order to scale.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think that's really important for a lot of business owners to understand is that like you can do business alone, right?
Yep,
You
absolutely. Yep.
absolutely can. But something that I've discovered, but I guess I knew this prior to this, right? So I've owned businesses for since 2007. So for a long time in my first business, my photo business, when I started that, I was like, oh, this is going to be so easy. I can pack the schedule full and all these people are going to pay me. But then nobody tells you about those behind the scenes hours, right? The hours editing photos, the hours emailing, the hours meeting with people, the reshoots, the this, the that, right? Like whatever that those things are. So I very quickly realized in that business that for every 1 hour that I am taking photos, there's at least one, probably up to 5 hours, I would say. And that's being a little like some people will go 5 hours per one client. And I have said, yeah,
Wow.
it depends on what the client is and, like for me, if you're taking my photo business, a 20-minute mini session, there's probably 90 minutes of like behind the scenes work. So that's everything from, taking the images off the camera, getting them on my computer, going through them, uploading, emailing, all that, like out to delivery. But like with a wedding client, it's I would say for 8 hours of shooting, it's at least 20 to 30 hours of behind the scenes work, right? So like one wedding client is about 40 hours of work. And,
Mhm.
people don't realize that. And it's very similar in the coaching industry, right? Where one coaching client is anywhere from 1 to 3 hours.
Mhm.
So, I can really see where having an OBM would be really beneficial to take some of those tasks off your plate where you're not constantly telling yourself, I'm so busy. I'm so busy. Because then
Mhm.
when you start telling yourself that, you think that, and you're like, oh my God, I'm so busy. I can't take on any more clients. And then the universe hears that, sees that, and goes, okay, no more clients for you.
You don't need any
You're
more.
so busy, you don't have time, right? So, and it's so crazy to me how that works, right? Like that, like, I don't know, universal law of like last week I said to myself, "Ah, I'm so busy. And I was like, no, 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 no. I just need to reprioritize. I'm
Yep.
not so busy. I have plenty of time. I need to reprioritize what I'm working on because for me right now, it is busy season for photography, right? Like I
Right.
still own the photo business. I'm also a coach, right? So like balancing those two, that's a whole other, that could be a whole other episode all by itself.
Yep, yep. And you're right, getting your priorities structured and documented are really what needs to happen. And I recommend you look at your goals daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and yearly. You
Yep.
don't just set yearly goals and run. You
Right.
have to really have daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly, you know.
Yeah.
And something that I do myself just because I like I'm a Leo like you and I love to be in the trenches. I like to keep my hands on things, but I love to stay organized. And
Mm-hmm.
what I do every single day before I get up from my desk is I go back through my to-do list and I'll
Yep.
rewrite it, add to it, cross out, whatever. And it's pages long. And I'm the old-fashioned, paper to-do list
Yep.
person.
Same.
Um, because I love it. I love to be able to touch it. But then what I do is that also clears your mind when you leave for the day, right? Because you've
Mm-hmm.
written everything down. And then it allows you to come back in the next morning and look at that and know where you left off and know where to start. So, because a lot of people, they don't do that and they come in the next morning and they're spending 30, 40 minutes going, okay, where did I leave off? What do I need to work on?
Yeah.
And before I leave the night before, and this is what I help coach clients through as an OBM is I tell them, have that list and mark down the top three that you want to get done as soon as you come in the morning. Now
Yep.
you know where you're starting as soon as you land on your desk,
Yeah. I love that. I love that. And so this made me think of, so before we started recording, I know we talked a little bit about human design and how you're kind of just starting your journey. But I
Right.
think, so we're both manifesting generators, and something that manifesting generators do well is quote unquote multitask. Something that we don't always do well is prioritize. So, as you're talking about, making that to-do list, it doesn't matter if it's 5 pages long or 5 bullet notes long.
Yep.
Having that priority set is also going to help you jump between the tasks, right? Because
Right.
I don't know if you experience this, but I definitely experience this where, I'll be working for like 20 minutes doing whatever, and then all of a sudden I'll be like, oh, I need to switch and I have to do something else. And then I can come back to that thing. But like
Yep.
having a list of like, okay, here's my priorities. I actually started calling my to-do list a results list, and that has helped like in my brain shift from like, oh my gosh, this to-do list is so long over to like, oh, what kind of results do I want today? Right? What are my priorities?
Priorities for the day. Yep.
Yeah. And I think, from a manifesting generator standpoint, learning to use that like excited energy, a lot of people call it the Tasmanian devil energy because we're like,
We are.
oh,
Yep.
literally, right? So, I think being able to tap into that. I'm curious for you, how has kind of understanding and learning more about human design, how has that like influenced your either your life or your business? Like, have you seen any, I guess, effects from learning about it?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's been like aha moments for me, right? It's
Yeah.
been, oh, that explains why I do kind of what you just talked about, why I feel like I'm all over the place because
Mm-hmm.
that's my nature. And I'm the one that makes sure everything gets done, and I'm the one running and doing, and
Yeah.
and I love it. And then
Right.
when somebody tries to take that away from me, like for example, I was gone over the weekend. I was out of town, and my youngest son, who's 16 and drives, he like made his own haircut appointment, and he drove
Wow.
himself there, and he did a couple other things, and I'm like, but that was my job, you know.
Yes.
You know. So I really, and so then I look back at, being a Manny Gen, I see, oh, it's just like aha moments. That's why I feel that way. But I do
Mm-hmm.
need to release and allow him to do that and allow him to grow, you
Right.
know.
Right. Yeah. I think
Yep.
some of that is like mom and Manny Jen, right? Because
Yeah, yeah.
it's the same thing. Like the other day, my daughter, she's 7, she's like, oh, I can totally get my own water from the sink. Like I know she can reach it now. And I was like, you can reach?
Yeah.
No, that's part of my job. And she's like, don't worry, mommy, I've got it. And I'm like, oh, you're like a real little kid. Like,
Right.
what is going on now? But also, I think, like as much as I was like, oh, I can't possibly release control, then when I do, it feels so good to be
It
like,
does.
oh, okay, yeah, you can totally do that. And, for me, when I coach people, right? Because that can also be a challenge to be like, okay, we're gonna do this, but like let's do this together. But I have to release that control to be like, okay, here are things you can do. Let's choose a way to do them. And
Yeah.
then for me to bring in their human design and to be like, okay, like looking at your design, here's some of the roadblocks you may come up against. Here's things that may work better for you. Like let's go out and do the thing, releasing that control to my clients to be like, okay, go do your thing. And
Yeah.
then like report back to me. Um, like releasing that control has also been a little challenging for me at times because I'm like, oh,
Yes.
I want you to do it right. But I also know like you have to go do the thing in order to know if it's right.
Yeah, yeah. We don't could because we don't want them to fail, right? It's in
Right.
our nature that we don't want them to fail. So we want to walk them through every single step.
Yes.
But same in parenting, we have to realize, okay, maybe they need to fail every now and then,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the other thing that the human design has helped me do is see that and I think one of the key things were the scripts that you gave out, right? Because what that helped me as I was reading through those, what that helped me realize was I was saying the same thing. Your scripts were saying the same thing that others have told me to say, but
Mm-hmm.
others have told me to say it in a different way that made me feel not as comfortable.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. And your scripts were written for Manny Jen, and it felt a better flow. It felt more comfortable. It didn't feel salesy. It didn't feel pushy. So I
Mm-hmm.
think once I embrace more into that human design, it'll only get better, right?
Yeah. Oh, totally, totally. And so something that's really cool about human design that I've noticed, and you could say I'm very wooey, right? Like I'm very into like, the moon and the stars and astrology and, tarot cards and like all that stuff. And like I truly believe that like the energy I put in behind those scripts is there for you to access, right? Like so my energy is there kind of holding you in a space where it's like, "Oh, this feels safe for me to do that thing."
Mhm.
So, like for me, learning about my human design, like one of the things that I am like here to do is to help people learn how to talk, right? Help people learn how to get their message out where they can access some of my confidence, some of my, like some of the gates and the channels and all that stuff that I have to help them release and feel confident in what they're doing, right? Their marketing, their DMs, their conversations, being in rooms with people, things like that. Um, so like I think that is such a cool gift. And I love that, the more people that download those scripts, the more feedback I get saying, "Oh my gosh, these are perfect." Like,
Right.
how did you know? How did you know? And I'm like, well, I mean, it was kind of a guess for me, but also I've read enough people's charts. I've talked to a lot of people, like of all the different types. So of all five types, like I've had different interactions with those people. I've had clients who are, projectors, manifestors. I've had like basically some from every category, right? So I've taken all that knowledge then and thought like, okay, the common denominator is that people are having trouble communicating. That's what
Mhm.
people come to me for. So how can I help them communicate better? And like what feels better than being able to communicate and knowing that people are like, "Oh, yeah, like let's totally connect. Yeah, I totally resonate with that thing." Or, "Yeah, I'd love to help." That to me, even if you take human design out of that equation, right? Like that's something that in all of my businesses, communication has been a very, very big part of it. Even when I worked in corporate, I created trainings, I gave trainings, like I created a lot of stuff for
Yeah.
that company. So it's like always been about communication. So then when I was like, oh, when I realized that, I was like, it can be that easy.
Yeah, it could be that. Yeah, and you're right. And I came from the corporate world too. And the two things that I did very well in corporate are two of the things that I'm very good at in my own business, which is
Hmm.
communication and follow-up.
Hmm.
And those two things are key for running a business because the money
Yeah.
is in the follow-up.
Yes.
And you
Yep.
have to be able to communicate well
Hmm.
when you do your follow-up.
Yep. Yeah. Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Follow-ups are so critical.
And
Um,
so many people don't do them. Don't.
yes.
And that's the other thing as an OBM that I actually marketed. I did a little tiny campaign about follow up. Just bring me in to do the follow up in your business because do you know
Hmm.
how much money you could pick up just by following up on all the stuff that you've left sitting there undone?
Oh my gosh. So much money. So much. Yeah. I mean, I don't necessarily love the term like you're leaving money on the table, but if you're not following up with people, you are leaving so much money on the table.
Yes. Yes.
So much. And like and that's something in lead generation that I teach a lot about. Like, yeah, you can use all these scripts, you can use them to your heart's content,
Mhm.
but if you're not following up, you're out of those people's minds, right? If
Right.
you want to stay top of mind, you're probably going to feel more annoying than they think you are,
Right.
right? Because if I send someone a message, like if they download the scripts, right, I'll send them a message on Facebook and say, hey, cool, here's the link to the scripts, like what do you know about your human design? So that allows me to do a couple of things, right? It's kind of a temperature check of like, okay, they're either, like they're beginner, intermediate, advanced, whatever. Um, and then I can have a conversation from there, but then I'll let them, like download the scripts, and there's a little funnel that I have behind it. But a couple days later, I'll go back into that conversation and say, hey, I saw you downloaded the scripts. I would love any feedback, that you have from them. Have you looked at them?
Right.
Have you used them? Right? Because a lot of people, they'll go and download things and they never open
Never
them.
use it because there's so many freebies out there. There's so many, and people just are freebie seekers. Some people, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, but I've found that so many, if you have a lead magnet that you're just like so excited to give out and then you follow up, like people are
Mhm.
so much more willing to hop on a call
Yeah,
to talk
yeah.
about like, oh, I have a question or, like so and that's also part of like when I teach people the $1,000 DM series is like
Mhm.
I teach you how to have these conversations so that it feels good for you, but also for them.
Right, right.
And I think, like, yeah, it drives me nuts when people don't follow up. Oh, it
No,
drives
and
me so
because
nuts.
some people are afraid to. They're afraid they're
Yes.
bothering people, and
Yeah.
they're really not,
No.
like I was buying some insurance online. I needed some new insurance and I had a couple questions and I'm like, geez, I need to call them. Well, guess what? The guy called me and he's
Yeah.
like, do you have any questions? I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, I have two questions. Can you answer them really quick?
Right.
Took
Right.
like less than a minute. Done. I got my
Yep.
questions answered.
Yep.
But so many people are afraid of that follow-up. And that's
Mm-hmm.
where I'm like, okay, if you're not comfortable with it, then you really need to outsource that piece because that is a huge part of your business. And to be successful, you have to be able to do the follow-up very, very well.
Right. Yeah, totally. Totally. I encourage a lot of my clients to try the follow-up on because if they are not comfortable with it, sometimes I feel like it's one of those things where it's like I just don't feel like I have enough time to do the follow-up. But if you don't have time for the follow-up, then how are you going to have time to serve
To
people?
serve the client. Right.
Yeah. So, I think learning that organically and then bringing, someone like you in for an OBM for them to be like, okay, I've done this. The follow-up is taking forever. I need to streamline this. I think that because I know a lot of people who will go, I hate follow-up. I'm just going to hire someone else to do it. And
Yep.
then it's not like I talked about energy. Your energy can kind of flow through whoever's doing your follow-up, but you have to understand the follow-up before
Right.
you can bring anyone else in.
Right. Yeah. And you hit
Mhm.
two key points there, right? The first one being you have to really be careful who you hire because you have to have that energy.
Yeah.
You can't hire a person that hates follow up, right? And is
Right.
just there to get a paycheck. You
Yes.
because that energy comes out, right? And
Hmm.
there's so many things and I think the other piece that you hit on right there is the other piece people are unorganized when it comes to follow up. They
Yeah.
don't know the right way, so then it feels overwhelming to them. And there's
Hmm.
so many different ways you can follow up. You can have automated email sequences, right? You can chat
Yeah.
with somebody in the DM. You can pick up the phone. There are so many different things, but if you don't have a map or a structure built out, it becomes very overwhelming.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, something that a lot of manifesting generators are really good at is, like we see the end game, we see the end result, and we're like, okay, how can I get you there as fast as possible, but as efficiently as possible?
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
So like I'm really good at being like, oh, we're going from A to Z. Okay, I see we can like skip these steps and then we can go around that. And if you do these things in this order, it'll get you to the end faster.
Yep.
And I think that's really one of the superpowers of manifesting generators is being able to see like, okay, I understand where you want to go. Like now let's get you there.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And then you pair that with somebody who has the OBM knowledge with strategy and all of that, it just really becomes a great superpower.
Right. Yeah, totally. Oh my gosh. Okay, so we've talked a ton about business. I would love to know what are some of your go-to methods for recharging, right? So for, when you like those memes that say slams the laptop shut till Sunday, right? Like what are some of those things that after you've, gone through your day or your week or whatever, what do you do to like recharge your energy?
Yeah, so I'm really bad at that, honestly.
Most managens are.
Yeah, yeah. But there are a couple things, and one seems really crazy because everybody's going to say, how do you call that like relaxing? But so the one thing I do love to do is baseball. So both
Yeah.
my sons play baseball. They've played since they were little. I played softball my whole life. So going and watching their baseball games is probably my truest happy place and
Hmm.
my best relaxation.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that. And then what I really like to do as well is I love to learn.
Hmm.
So as crazy as it sounds, I could shut the laptop from work, but then I'll go sit on the couch and I can't just watch TV like my husband can. I have to have either a book or the
Yep.
laptop, and
Yep.
I'm sitting there doing an online course while watching TV because I
Yeah.
constantly love to learn new things.
Hmm. But I think so. I also love to learn. So, like, I totally get that because, and I think, you know, self-care gets a bad rap because so many people are like, oh, self-care is baths and mani-pedis and like massages. And while, yes, that is self-care. It's not the only self-care, right? And I think, it sounds like for you being around your people, right? And then being able to learn, like, that is your form of self-care. And I don't think there's anything bad about that. In fact, I encourage all of my clients, right? Anyone who I work with, even anyone who's like in my world to like find those things that really excite you to do outside of your business. Because so often when you can do those things, that's when you're going to start having those little nuggets of like downloads of like, oh my gosh, I could totally bring this into my business.
Yeah.
Or, right? Like, or I could totally amplify that thing if I do this. Or what would this look like? So it just puts you in that, like, in that it's like that this fun, like abundant, like open, right? Like where you're open to receive and
Yep.
just it just puts you in such a cool space that most times when you're in that, like people are more attracted to what you're talking about because you're like, oh, I'm so excited. I've got all this stuff. I can't wait to tell you. Sit down, like grab a coffee, grab a beer. I don't care, whatever it is. Sit down. You have to learn this, right? You have to listen to this. This is
Yep.
what I help with. Like, this is what I do. I'm so excited. And like that energy is infectious, and people are like, yeah,
Yeah.
I
Yep.
want in.
Absolutely. And then to your point, I learned so many different things and then I want to implement them in the business that I literally had to implement what I learned from one of my coaches was a a parking lot system
Yep.
to not implement everything right away that you learn, right? Take your time, put it on the list. So I have a ginormous list,
Yeah. Yeah.
but that's okay.
Right. I love that. And I think, I've also learned about the idea parking lot, and I have like three or four of them. Because I would forget that I started it and then I would start a new one. But,
Yeah.
I think especially knowing that I have so many ideas that I get inspired by so many things,
Hmm.
my nature is to just go and act on those things immediately, right?
I
And
know. Yep.
sometimes, most of the time, I need to have the idea, write it down, and just give myself like a little bit of time, whether that's an hour or a week or a year, to like write that down. And then if I come back to it and go, oh, yeah, that was a good idea, think I want to try that.
Hmm.
That gives me a little bit more clarity on whether it's just like an urge or like shiny object syndrome, or like whether it's really like a quote unquote true idea for me, right?
Right.
Yeah, this has been on my mind. I haven't been able to get it off my mind, so I probably need to act on it.
Yep, yep. And
Mhm.
that's what's been great. I do the same because in the beginning I was like, oh, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do
Yeah.
this. And then I start everything and I'm like, oh my gosh, no wonder you're overwhelmed.
Yes. And I mean, I know a lot of other entrepreneurs who have the same issue, right? Where they're like, I'm going to download this freebie and then do this, and I'm going to do this course and I'm going to create that. And just, it's just too much, right?
Right.
Where,
Right.
again, going back to, we talked about taking action, like the action of like, are you taking action that's going to bring you money, or are you just taking action because everybody says you need to be busy?
Right. Right.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Okay, so we are at the last question. This has been such a great conversation. This is also probably my favorite question. It's off the wall. It's really has nothing to do with the rest of the episode. But it's one of my favorites. So, if you were a kitchen gadget or utensil, what would you be and why?
Oh, a kitchen
Yeah.
gadget or utensil.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh gosh, I guess probably the blender.
Oh, I
Because
love it.
woo, everything's all over, right? Everything. I've got tons of ideas. Everything's blending, mixing. I love to bring things together. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I'd say a blender.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love that so much. And like I say this to everyone, and I really do. I love everyone's responses because they're so different, right? But they're also just very genuine to be like, yeah, I totally. And I can totally see where being a blender is like right up your alley, right? Because you can bring so many things together in one spot. And I think
Right.
that's so important.
Yep.
Awesome. Okay, so I will leave all of your links down below in the show notes, but go ahead and tell everyone the best way to connect with you online.
Yeah, you can connect with me online through my Facebook page, which is Dedicated Virtual, or Instagram is also Dedicated Virtual. And the name of the business is Dedicated Virtual Professional Services. And I
Cool.
would love to connect with anyone.
Yay! Awesome. Okay. So this has been so great. Again, all the links and such will be below. Is there anything else? Any last parting thoughts that you have for the listeners?
No, I mean, this has been fabulous. Thank you so much for having me today. This has really been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
What my best advice to everyone would be just put yourself out there, right? Go to some networking events, whether they're online or in person, put yourself out there. But then also take a look internally at your business. And if there's things that you need to outsource, don't be afraid to do that.
Yeah. Oh, I love that so much. Thank you so much for being on the show today, and I can't wait to chat again.
Yes, that sounds awesome. Thank you.
Wow, what a great interview. Thank you so much for showing up here on the Chaos to Clarity podcast. Again, my name is Maggie. I'm so excited to connect with you. You can find all of the information, all of the links below in the show notes for today's interview. And I hope you have the best day ever.